squirrel seems to love his little corn on the cob there. Well, it's Huck. And I'll be honest with you, I have been feeling really good here the last few days, which is surprising only because, last week I wasn't feeling as well. And beginning to worry a little bit that, every time I don't feel well, I worry. But this week, despite the fact that it has been, well, 85 degrees plus. Yesterday, I think it was around 88, 89 degrees. And today, it's not quite so bad yet, but then it's only 12:30, and it'll continue to heat up. But it has been in the high 80s this week, and of course, humidity's been high. Here in northeastern Ohio, whenever we hit this really high temperatures like this, these extremely warm temperatures, there is almost daily, a pretty good percentage of a chance that we are going to get hit with some late afternoon thunder showers. That seems to happen, because the humidity is always high here. We get all of that moisture, the air coming off of Lake Erie. Hits that hot air at the heat of the day, usually around 4 or 5 o'clock, and then boom, we'll get a thunderstorm or something, and it doesn't usually last very long. But at any rate, that kind of weather though is usually wreaked havoc on my on my breathing, the humidity and the heat, and for whatever reason, the last few days I have been able to manage it, relatively well. I mean, I guess the thing that I've always had to be concerned about is that there are times when I can't walk, very far without getting, like really out of breath. Or worse, I'll try to do something. I'll go out in the yard. I'll try to, pull some weeds or, carry something across the yard or whatever. And of course, I get to the point where I'm really winded to the point where I'm struggling to breathe, and I usually can catch myself before I get too bad, and I'll stop and I'll catch my breath. And sometimes I've had to kind of, get back to the house and maybe put the oxygen on for a couple of minutes just to kind of help, regulate my breathing or whatever. But for the last few days or whatever, really for more than a week, I guess, I have, resisted the urge to try to get to the oxygen. And I've just, if I get, find myself starting to get a little winded, I just stop and catch my breath. And I, go on. At any rate, I've been doing extremely well by my, by my standards, and I just hope that this continues. That it feels good to be able to, feel like you can walk. Last week, for instance, my friend Dustin was here, and I walked 3/4 of the way around the block, which would have probably been about 1/4 of a mile. I had Dustin with me, and he rode the scooter alongside me, and then with about a little bit more than 1/4 of the way to go, I decided to ride the scooter back home and not press it. But yesterday, despite the fact that it was so crazy hot, I was able to go do some shopping. I bought that little bird bath. I've got a couple of bird feeders and I found, both of these bird feeders that I used to put up. My mom used to love watching the birds, and I have a little squirrel feeder. So I finally broke down, and they have a handyman hardware store down here where you could buy two 20-pound bags of birdseed for like $4 if you had the coupon. And I bought a bag of this squirrel food or chipmunk food or whatever it's corn, I guess. You can see the little squirrel there. He is loving the corn. And so I finally put that up the other day. And I've been sitting around and bought the corn. So, for like an investment of a little over $10, my yard is it has been filled with wildlife here. I've been visited by a couple of chipmunks who have a permanent house here somewhere in my yard. There are a family of 4 squirrels, which my dog loves to chase. And there are a family of rabbits that come around. And that's in addition to the fact of all of the birds. There are, I don't know, more than a dozen sparrows, a family of which are using this house right here. And there are some little babies in there that the mom and the dad are feed every morning. I've also got a pair of male and a female cardinal that are come around every day. And of course there's a lot of blackbirds and a few pigeons. And of course I have a little hummingbird that I showed you, or no, I think I posted that on Facebook, so I don't think I did show you. But there's a little hummingbird that comes around every morning and every evening, and he eats out of his little bird. That's another thing that was laying around on the back porch, and so I just mix like a 3/4 of a cup of sugar with 3 cups of water, and comes around and feeds on that. My flowers, I got a great deal on these. The local grocery store was selling flowers for $5.99 a basket, and those two are just beautiful. I've been feeding them, some Miracle Grow. And so anyway, my yard looks really nice, I think. And now, as far as politics are concerned, of course, they've had the 2 debates. Kamala Harris was the undisputed winner of the 2 nights. And I would say deservedly so. I thought, she had a command of, of the proceedings, and she was able to kind of make a lot of the other people on stage with her, the second debate, look a little bit childish with the one line that she had when she kind of told everybody to quit their food fight. And but be honest with you, the first night I thought Elizabeth Warren held her own. And so the real I think the real impact of the first 2 debates is probably going to be that there are a couple of people that that are really going to have to make a decision of whether or not they should even move on, from this point, or continue or get out of the race. And I think the debate definitely did some damage to a few campaigns, nothing that can't be overcome because it's so early. Biden particularly was damaged, not just by Kamala Harris, but it was also damaged in a sense from Swalwell, who unfortunately is not going to see any benefits of that himself, I don't think. I think Buttigieg probably got hurt, and that seems to be showing in the poll numbers. He lost considerable support after the debate, and I think some of the people that were really struggling just to be noticed, Delaney and Tim Ryan, for instance, Williamson, and Swalwell, for instance, I think they didn't do themselves any favors. The thing that's going to help Biden overcome the damage that was done there, and Buttigieg as well, is the fact that they've had, some really good fundraising up till now, and that those funds are going to allow them to continue, to press forward despite the setback. And right now, that's what these early debates are really all about, I think, is putting these candidates in a very crowded field in a position where they can continue to fundraise and, continue to build a network in, particularly in the early states where, where the first contests are going to be held, but also, in as many donor communities around the country as possible. I read something interesting that a very small percentage outside of the 1% is a very small percentage, probably less than 8% of eligible voters are going to make a donation to any particular, candidate in the 2020 race. And as of now, we've probably seen less than half of that. Probably less than 4% of people have either indicated that they have or are considering making a donation in the future. So each of these candidates are scrambling right now to find out where, that 4%, or if they're fortunate enough, that 8% are. Who are these people? How do we get their money? And, I know I've been besieged because I made a little donation, very little donation to Elizabeth Warren of $10 very early in all of this. I have, somehow I am on a lot of people's mailing lists. I'm on the Joe Biden mailing list. I'm on the Kamala Harris mailing list. I've been getting bombarded with Elizabeth Warren donation requests. And I'm trying to think. I'm sure I've received other. Tim Ryan has sent me donation requests at any rate. And then in addition to that, I've been getting requests from different organizations like the Democratic Senate Campaign Committee, the DSCC, from MoveOn.org, from I don't know, a couple of the other organizations escape me right now. And frankly, I get these sometimes, especially as we're getting close to a deadline or another, as we did at the end of June here. I was getting 2, 3 even 4 emails from the same sources a day begging me to make a donation before the deadline. At any rate, I think that's going to determine, I think, before there's going to be another debate here in July or whatever, but for September, when the qualifying thresholds, more or less double from what they were for these first 2 debates. People having to average a 2% poll average, for instance, or 130,000 individual donors with, more than 200 donors from at least 20 different, individual states. Well, as those higher thresholds kick in for September, I mean, there are clearly at least 10 of the 20 candidates, I think, that are very likely, not to hit those marks. And right now, I think there's only maybe 6 that have already met those thresholds, and maybe 1 or 2 that are closing in on those thresholds. For instance, Julian Castro, Cory Booker have not met those thresholds yet, but probably most likely will. Buttigieg, Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders have all met those thresholds at this point, and so it's a scramble, I think, for a lot of these candidates to try to get there. And I think we'll see the first weeding out, because if you can't get, it's not the poll numbers, and it's not even the individual donors that matter. It's having enough money to continue, to campaign. That becomes an issue. And that's one of the hazards, I think, of, having a campaign that starts as early as we do in this country, probably unlike any other country in the world that I'm aware of. Running a campaign that lasts, nearly 2 years is expensive, and requires a lot of, on the ground, boots on the ground in a lot of places, a lot of organizing, a lot of campaign expenditure. I know one of the things that some of these people, especially the more desperate ones right now, are spending an enormous percentage of their fundraising right now is on social media advertising, trying to reach donors, and trying to get those numbers up before September. So like I say, I have a feeling that we're going to probably weed out quite a few. Interestingly, though, there are some people I think I would like to hear a little bit more from. I think some of the things that they're adding to the debate, let's face it, there was a lot of people on stage those 2 nights. And while that's not conducive to getting any individual a lot of time to, elaborate on what, they would like to do or how they would like to do it, it did offer us an opportunity to hear a number of different issues brought up that frankly probably would not have even, come to the surface were it not for, certain people on that stage. And when they're gone, we may get, very little or no attention at all to some pretty serious issues. I mean, I think Cory Booker, for instance, and well, Cory Booker, I thought was, came very strong on the gun issue. I thought obviously there were candidates who brought up, issues that were very important to them, and instead there were some candidates like Kamala Harris. The thing that she brought up that seemed to win her a lot of kudos, in attacking Biden and his opposition to federally enforced busing back in the 70s. The fact is that's not an issue that's really on the front burner right now. I mean, there are a lot of racial-based issues to talk about. Busing isn't real high on that list, I don't think, at the moment. And fact is, busing wasn't real popular, and there's not really a lot of even minorities that are asking for a change in that policy right at the moment. So, at any rate, it's interesting that that would be the avenue for her to go after Biden. I think there are other avenues to take, but she, I think she's trying to peck away at Biden's stronghold on the minority vote. And being someone of color herself, it's a natural constituency for her. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I'm going to sign off now. I hope everybody has a wonderful 4th of July, and I will talk to you all again real soon.